You need this shit in your life.
What's up, y'all? It's Anime, and I'm coming back to you guys with another episode of Unsigned Hype. I used to talk about individual stories, books, stuff like that, but ever since I moved my podcast to YouTube, I'm branching out, and now I'm sitting down with creators. And I have two apps. When I say these two are mad lads, y'all aren't listening to me, okay? These two are changing the game in the realm of crowdfunded / pre-ordered independent comic books. They have several titles that are very successful, and one of them I've already talked about on my channel already, Kamen America. That's right. Why am I saying this as if you guys can't see the title of the episode? Okay, let me stop wasting time and introduce these guys. Timothy Lim and Mark Pellegrini. How y'all doing tonight?
Fantastic. Thank you for having us on.
Doing great.
Definitely. Thank y'all for even agreeing to come on with me, because I was talking to Mark just before you got on, Tim, that I understand that y'all are people, but I'm still a little awestruck and starstruck talking to you guys, because you essentially breathe new life into my love for comics, and you help me see that it's possible for someone like me where I am to do my own comics, from the independent perspective versus having to go the route of joining one of the big two.
We're honestly just happy anybody wants to talk to us.
Oh, and that's one of the things I love about both of you, is that you stay yourselves, you stay your genuine selves, and you stay humble. I've seen so many creators, and obviously we don't have to go into particulars, but I'm sure you guys have a big list in your own heads of people who you saw their book launched or it blew up, or they started working with a big company, and it's like they just became a completely different person, and it's like, oh well, you can't talk to me, and part of the reason why I wanted to have you guys on is because, as much as I love your books, and we will talk more about the books, don't worry, audience, but I really love the way you guys interact with the fans, the people on social media. Like, if you could just, I guess, maybe break down um the way you sort of see yourselves, and the way you navigate being the way you are on Twitter and Instagram and stuff, because I think a lot of creators, they suffer from either feeling like they're too big or being too detached, but you guys seem to have that perfect middle ground.
Sure. I think one thing that helps us out a lot is that we entered the industry, quote unquote, through the merchandising side. And the merchandising side is all about creating something that will sell. If I did not sell a certain number of units within the first 2 weeks, essentially, we wouldn't be having this conversation because I would be fired. But they needed artwork that they knew they could put on merchandise that would actually generate a profit. Mark and I both come from kind of blue collar jobs. So we come from industries that require a huge degree of professionalism. Mark probably more so than me, simply because he runs into more people. And then on my end, I teach and I see patients. So on the medical side of things, you always hear about bedside manner, which is kind of the attitude that you should have with interacting with people. Even if they're having a bad day or you're having a bad day, you have to conduct yourselves in a professional manner. And there's no one who's going to be necessarily watching over you when you do it. It's just understood. And I think we took a lot of that with us when we went independent, simply because one thing that we saw over time was we remember when we would go to conventions and there were artists and writers, and they were very hands off. They were like celebrities, which is understandable. But when we started doing conventions, we started noticing that some people were interacting with us in the same way, like they were maybe starstruck or shy, but we had already been on that side. So it's like we work like 9-to-5 jobs, and most of the time our coworkers don't even know what we do, and it's not a big deal. Like, we're just normal people. And so I wouldn't say it's humility as much as it is. It's just always been our perspective. I mean, it's not like we go to Walmart and get hounded by fans all the time, like Arnold Schwarzenegger or something. So I think
you don't.
No, not me. Maybe you, Mark, since you're the writer, but not me. That's for sure.
Well, I mean, my social media policy is mostly when I'm on Twitter, or really that's all I am on is Twitter. I'm on Minds, but I don't use it too much. But my attitude is, I mean, I'll retweet like stuff that I like. I'll tweet about horror movies. You know, I'll talk about Ninja Turtles and comics and whatever. I mean, it's just social media. It's basically just whatever's on your mind at the time. But my attitude is that I don't get into fights with people on social media. People are free to come by in the comment section and snipe at me and say something nasty or try to, instigate something with me, and I just ignore them. I've seen people get into, the 10-mile long comments back and forth with someone, in a fight, and like there's no satisfaction in that. Nobody really wins in an internet fight. It's just whoever is the one who gets tired first is the loser, I guess, and that's not really resolving any argument or having any point to it. It's just a waste of energy and time and getting yourself upset. So I mean, we'll post links to Kamen America or Black Ops, one of our new books, and sometimes we'll get a person in the comments who'll say something nasty at us, and instead of getting into a big long fight with them and becoming the lol cow for them to milk, we just ignore them, and that's been a good policy for us so far. We've had people tell us like, oh, on social media, you need to be completely sterile. You need to never say anything negative about anything because that might lose you a customer for someone who disagrees with you. You should never use bad words on social media, even if that you're talking casually, because then that might upset or offend somebody. You should never post this. You should never do that. Like, well, we're just going to be ourselves on social media. We're just not going to antagonize people, or we're just going to ignore the people who antagonize us. And I mean, I think that's been very sincere so far. And I think that's given us I don't know, I wouldn't call us having a popular online presence, but at least it's given us a fairly tolerable one.
No, I definitely think you guys have the right idea. Both of the perspectives that you just came from there, they really ring home because on one hand, I feel like whenever you're in a position where you're either, like you said, selling something or creating something where people are going to be interacting with, partaking, and hopefully exchanging money, you would want to give them the best experience, the best environment, and I have, a good few years in customer service. I always say that if you've never had any sort of customer service job at all, you missing out. Like they need to have that mandatory. Like, how some countries they have like mandatory military time. We should at least have mandatory some years of customer service jobs for when you're a
humility.
teenager. It does, man. Like
and that's something a lot more people could stand to learn.
Seriously, man. Look, until you've been called everything under the sun but a child of God from an actual church lady because her medication won't ready on time and she need her heart pills, you don't really know suffering. But I really love that idea of just making sure you're giving them that best experience, that best type of that best care. And then like you said, Mark, you have that good middle ground of you being yourself because you don't want to be phony. I definitely feel like when I interact with you guys, I'm talking to the best version of you guys on social media. Like this is you. I don't feel like you're putting on an act, but I never see you guys get in fights, arguments. Like you could Google either of y'all's names and try to find some example of one of y'all popping off on someone. Can't find it. There's no video of Timothy Lim exposed, goes off, calls disgruntled fan slur. Like we're not gonna have that. And I feel like that definitely works to you guys' favor because you do unfortunately see a lot of people, especially in the indie scene, get caught up in that stuff.
It's funny because I'm glad that you mentioned that because there are times when I'm tempted, especially because, there's that term called gaslighting, which is the idea that you basically repeat a lie enough times and people start to have that weird Mandela effect where they believe it. And that's happened recently, at least in the last 2 years, is there's a couple of independent creators, one in particular, who's always like, oh, Tim and that whole crew, they're antagonizing me. Like they just won't leave me alone. And people repeat it because they hear it all the time. But I mean, I think the most clapback I ever gave was a few days ago. Someone was saying that, and I just said, this is just me spouting facts, but just Google my name and that guy who's saying that, and you're going to see it's a one-sided conversation. I intentionally don't say anything. One, I don't have the time. I'm really busy. And two, Mark and I had kind of made that that our position a few years ago, where it's like, hey, anytime anyone antagonizes us, don't address it directly. I mean, it's water off a duck's back to just kind of let it slide, because within 24 hours it goes away. So I don't know if that actually made some eyes open or not, but you know how gaslighting works. These people are like, no, I've seen it. Like, it's definitely Tim and Mark and Doug and all these people like going after this guy. And I'm like, there's absolutely no evidence of any of that. If you just sat back and did your own independent research, like you just said, a Google search will show that. So I'm glad, I really appreciate that you noticed that. Those days are frustrating for me, because I'm like, I'm literally over here doing my own thing. And whenever I hear people, especially independent creators who are much bigger than us, saying that, I'm like, what threat do we have to you that you feel compelled to lie about us in that manner? But again, I think the culture of comics is very different than what Mark and I are used to.
Really, yeah. Y'all keep to yourselves. You just like, I really am just over here writing comics, tweeting about horror stories and bad anime dubs from the 90s. Why are people pulling me into this madness? But
Yeah, it could
yeah.
be a bit of a mess, but you know, one thing that we've noticed is that within a day, it goes away on its own, but it's cyclical. Typically, it's people who are receiving some flack for something else, and they need a diversion. They need to try and wrangle in another topic to talk about. And I think that makes us convenient targets, because some people know that we don't fight back. So people can just kind of say whatever we want. And it was a 2-year plan in the making, where I was like, Mark, we're either going to succeed or fail spectacularly at this. But what if we just don't engage? What if the books will be good enough that even people who might not like us, they'll say, hey, I heard some terrible things about these people, but my gosh, like their books come out on time, and I didn't pay that much money, and they're great, and we enjoyed them. And that was a huge gamble on our part, but you know, we're very blessed and fortunate, because we think it's paid off in terms of we're at the position right now where it really is just words just being yelled into the ether that don't really have much impact on us. I think most people, when they hear it, they have the same reaction you do, where it's like, yeah, you know, I know these guys. Haters gonna hate, but their stuff is good and I like it. And so hopefully we'll just keep that up, and I don't lose my temper one of these days, and neither does Mark.
Right. Now, Mark, I do want to pitch that over to you real quick, because I wonder how often do you have to sit on like a Twitter ether where you just like, I could unload on this fool and destroy their career. I could destroy their reputation right now, but
It's like I said, in a Twitter fight, nobody wins. So I don't think I'd actually be destroying anybody's career or their future if I just went back and forth with them. If anything, I'd just be giving them more attention. But it's like Tim said, that when you don't let them instigate you and get a rise out of you, then it goes away on its own within 24 hours, because
yeah,
there's no show. So the audience goes away, because there's no fight. It's like, the two kids in the playground, or all the other kids in the circle, like fight, fight, fight. But then
yeah.
when they do, after like 5 minutes, when they're just kind of like not fighting, all the kids are like, this sucks, and they turn around and go away. That's
Exactly.
what Twitter is like. When someone's trying to antagonize you and get a rise out of you, they want that like 4-day long Twitter war where you go back and forth in the comment section, because then there's a show. Or they want you to go on like a YouTube stream and get in like a big back and forth row with them. And like, no, you're creating the spectacle that they want. You're becoming, like I said, a lol cow, where a lol cow is just somebody who keeps getting milked by trolls just for the reactions.
Hmm.
And then like, why would you let them have that satisfaction? Whereas
Exactly.
you can just like, you know what? I'm just going to ignore them and keep posting about horror movies, and then eventually they're going to get bored and go away, and that's exactly what they do.
Just don't look. just don't look. And
Yeah.
it's a wrap. You're literally giving them what they want when you feed it to them. It's almost, someone said this weird thing a long time ago. It may have actually been in the Bible. Like it's so odd. I think it was something about don't feed the trolls. Like, I don't know. Have y'all ever heard that?
It was on Wander Over Yonder. I remember last time I saw that.
There you
That
go.
Cricket Kraken cartoon. But it's funny though, because like you got a celebrity like Kevin Smith, who you can find him in the comments section on blogs arguing with people who said they didn't like Jersey Girl. It's
Right.
like, Kevin, you're a multi-millionaire Hollywood director. Why are you going into the Ain't It Cool News comment section and getting into a huge back and forth because some guy with a screen name that says Jersey Girl sucks posted that Jersey Girl sucks, and now you're going back and forth. I'm like, why are you even taking that bait, man?
Why?
Yeah.
You have created things that will outlive you in the public consciousness. Why are you wasting time with random anime screenshot 58? Like, go write a movie, go direct something, please. But
Go do Clerks 3 or something,
right. But speaking of the actual creation of things, I did want to switch gears a bit to the way you do your creation, your campaigns. Because what I found very interesting about what you guys do is technically it's crowdfunding. Like, you go through the crowdfunding sites, the Kickstarter, the Indiegogo, but the type of, between the rewards we get and the guarantee we have to get these books, it's really not technically crowdfunding, is it? Because we're not paying you to create something. We're paying to get the thing that's already there.
Correct. It's a pre-order.
Right. And I definitely feel like that model, if I could ever get to that point, I would be set. Because I think some people, when they come into crowdfunding, there's always the question of, okay, will I even get the book? This is from some nobody. Am I just throwing away my hard-earned money? But you guys, you deliver every time. You fulfill that campaign every time. And so you build up this beautifully faithful and loyal fan base that I like to say, yes, I'm a part of. Yes, I'm a Kamen America stan. Yes, I'm in the National Waifu Association. Like, I'm one of those people that I'll read stuff where I don't even know if it's going to be good or not. It's just got y'all name on it.
Well, we're glad that we've developed that type of loyalty, and we really appreciate it. Part of that, just from a business perspective, and again, we've taken some pretty calculated risks, but the payoff has been good. That means that I'm a little bit more conservative moving forward, because I can only, when I play the roulette table, it can only land on my color like a couple of times before it starts diminishing returns. Mm-hmm. But one thing that helps is that because Mark and I both have day jobs, it means that there are sacrifices that we can make hoping for a reward later on. And in Mark's case, it's the writing. In my case, it's the art. So as the artist, having not paying anyone, it's kind of like, well, there's something that I do as a hobby. So if we crowdfund it, and let's say we only make like $1,000, what we're only doing, we're not even paying ourselves, because essentially, regardless of whether or not we're getting paid or not, we would have done it anyway, just as a hobby. The money represents the funding needed to actually put it into print. So that's like a little bit of advice that we give to creators who are their own team. They're not outsourcing their artwork. It's a huge benefit, because it means that, hey, if you're doing your own art and you want to get a comic off the ground, essentially pretend that you don't pay yourself. And then you can factor in the budget that you need to simply create the book without having to pay someone to do it. So that's something that we had thought of fairly early on. And that's one of the reasons why we've had sort of momentum, because in our earliest crowdfunding, we were essentially not getting paid as much. We would take home a $300 check. Everything else went to the fulfillment. And we never changed the model. That's still how we do it. We use the same calculus that we have from the very beginning, making sure that the budget goes to paying for the outside art, for paying for the printing, and paying for the fulfillment. So it's hard work. It's a lot of hard work. And looking back on 2 years, it's really, if I had looked back on 2 years and told my past self that we would be where we are today, I honestly wouldn't have believed it, because honestly, we have exceeded kind of our own expectations, and that's good. But like we said in the beginning, we also try to stay humble and not rock the boat too much.
Yeah. And I concur like 1,085% that you guys, the way you lay it out to me right now, that sounds so good. It makes too much sense. I'm sort of taking a similar route with what I'm doing, even though I do have to pay artists because unfortunately I have the artistic skill to do a halfway decent stick figure sometimes if I'm not inebriated. But I was lucky to find people who not only vibe with me creatively, but they can also, they're essentially a one person team per book. So they can do the line work, the inking, the lettering, all that stuff is completely them. So I'm not having to hit up 4, 5, 6 different people just to do one page. You know, if it was that, like it would probably be 2024 before people saw this stuff because woof. But I almost want to study from y'all like legit, but I did see on the last writing, what was it, the writing comics 101 on Thinking
Oh yeah.
Critical's channel. I
Mhm.
did see how you guys, and by the way, just a little side note to the audience, if y'all ain't subscribed to Thinking Critical, you need to go out there and go ahead and subscribe to Thinking Critical. Every Sunday, Wes, that's the guy from the channel, he sits down with Mark and another awesome creator by the name of Aaron Sparrow, and they just hash it out on a topic about comics. And they've talked about mentorship and everything. It's just, there's so much I feel like we could learn from following you guys' example and really taking to heart just what you're doing here. And the last thing I kind of want to touch on, we've talked about how you conduct yourselves online with the fans. We've talked about the way you do the crowdfunding. As basic as a question as this may sound, what goes into you all's process when it comes to just creating characters that feel so real? Because I honestly can't say when the last time was where I felt close to a character the way I do Carly and the rest of the Common Core, obviously, but I feel the closest to Carly. So I guess what goes into you guys' minds when you craft these characters?
I'll let Mark answer that because he's the writer. But one thing that I'll kind of steal the thunder from him from is there's a piece of advice that he gave in, I think, one of his earlier writing streams, which is that to help find a character's voice, pick a voice actor that you know and give them that voice. When you can actually hear the character in your head, they seemingly come alive, like they're a little bit more real than normal. I don't quite know Mark's method for writing like Carly, the main character, but I do know that in our original pitch sessions, how did we imagine her? A lot of people imagine her as being kind of like this supermodel type. But the reality is, I think her appeal is that we imagine her as every girl next door that you had a boyhood crush on. In If you look at their physical beauty, they may be plain Janes, but it's like in your mind, they're like really beautiful women, but they have kind of a heart of gold and they're very good natured and very wholesome. But I do know
Yeah.
that for some of the other characters, for example, Sylvia, who is actually my personal favorite, she's basically every like oh ho ho girl wrapped into one. Like, you know,
Yes.
that's an anime trope that I love. I actually really like that character trope. And so when Mark actually created that character, kind of without really any input from me, but I loved it because I was like, oh, I actually like that character because that's how I hear her in my head. Whenever I hear her talking, she sounds like Karen from Street Fighter. You know, I can hear her
I
laugh
was
in my
just
head,
gonna
like,
say that.
yeah, that kind of condescending, like, oh ho 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 ho.
Oh,
Yeah.
and you have
So
to throw the hand up when you do it.
right, and so whenever Mark and I do script pitches to each other, there's almost no dialogue from our ends. We're just talking about how the plot goes along. But he's actually the one who gives them life. So I'll let him pick up the ball and take it from here.
All right.
Oh, I mean that's one of the best tricks. Now I can't. Someone actually taught me the voice actor thing, but I actually have like I have a really good ear for voice actors. You probably see me on Twitter interacting with the voice artist spotlight all the time as one of my favorite Twitter feeds.
Mhm.
So I'm pretty good at nailing voice actors and getting their voices in my head. So like Carly's voice for when I write her dialogue is she sounds like Jennifer Hale doing the voice that she did for Samantha and Totally Spies. A
Yes.
redhead character. And it doesn't really matter if the reader reads Carly in that voice. Obviously, they can't, they're not telepathic. They can't read my mind. So they don't know what voice actor I've chosen, but they can interpret the consistency in her voice and the way she talks and the kind of contraction she uses and the kind of dialect she uses. And whether or not they come to the same conclusion of the voice actress that I had in my head, they'll still hear a consistent voice whenever they read their dialogue. And that's the important parts to get across to the reader. And that helps the characters feel really real, because it means that the audience, when they read that character's dialogue, it sounds organic and consistent, like the way a real human being talks. And that's like Tim said, like that's one of the best tricks for writing dialogue. But when we get started, right now I'm working on Common America 5. I'm doing the scripting now. I'm about 20 pages into it. And but when we get started, what we do is we basically sit down and we talk about where we want the story to go in that volume. I take a bunch of notes, and then I try to organize all those notes into a linear timeline. And then we workshop that back and forth, and we develop what we think is going to be the theme of that volume, what the point of the volume is going to be. And then we workshopped the plot and the character threads and the arcs around that thematic point of the volume, so that everything feels consistent and sewn together. Nothing is just like this weird spontaneous nonsense, a non sequitur. Everything serves the theme of that volume, including what the characters are going through at that particular time. And then once we have that figured out, I can break it down into a 3-act structure for the plot summary. And for Common America 5, Tim and I had that go back and forth a few times, and Tim basically said, like, give me a week or two to ruminate on this, Mark, and I'll get my full-blown notes back to you. Because like when I write like a rough summary, I'll put notes in saying like, and then something has to happen here. There'll be holes in it, but that's what workshopping is for. Workshopping is figuring out how to fill those holes and how to bridge. You want to get from point A to point C, but you haven't quite figured your point B out. And then that's what Tim and I workshop together, is like, what's that point B that'll get us there? And so like Tim will get his notes back to me, and we'll merge our ideas for the volume and the arc. And then I do the page breakdowns, which is basically like, okay, page 1, this happens. Page 2, this happens. And then I send that to Tim. Usually by that point, Tim, we already agree on the summary. So Tim's like, okay, he just looks at, how many pages am I using to tell this segment of the story? Like, does this dialogue between these characters, does it really need to be 3 pages, or can you get that dialogue across in 2 pages or even 1 page? Like, there's an action sequence here, but is it too long that the audience will get bored, or is it too short where you can't do the action justice? And Tim will give me notes and the page breakdowns that way. And then once we agree on those, I just start scripting, and the scripting goes really fast, honestly, and it's more fun because I just look at my page breakdowns. I know exactly what content is going to be on each page, and then I just extrapolate that into my script with, I break down the panels, and then I write the dialogue, and that's the really fun part. And so that just goes by as a breeze, and that's we've got it down to a basically like a well-oiled machine. We've got our rhythm down. We've got our momentum going. So while I'm scripting the next issue, Tim is drawing the current issue, and then Iconic Comics is fulfilling on the one we've already completed and done our pre-orders for. So we're always several steps ahead of each other and working in tandem. And when we get 3 books out a year.
That is beautiful. Like, I'm just imagining like like you said, like a well-oiled machine, just a gear which feeds into this gear, which feeds into this wheel, and each one is doing its own thing, but they're all working together. And the way you have it broken down to where you all's your creative process, both of yours, you feed off of each other, and you both allow each other the space to do what each you're doing individually. And I feel like that definitely plays a part in just the richness of the story. Like, I definitely feel like this is a team effort, because you read some books and it's like, okay, clearly the writer and the artist, or the illustrator, they were on like 2 different pages they came to enough of a consensus to put together a product, but that's just it. It's just a product. You know, it almost feels like one of those Hollywood movies done by committee. But
Yeah.
I never ever get that feeling when I'm reading, whether it's Common America or Black Hops. I'm gonna admit I haven't read Walmart yet, but I want to go check that one out too. I never get that feeling with any of you guys' stuff. It feels so organic. The characters, they definitely feel real. And Mark, I remember when you told me that Jennifer Hale was your voice reference for Carly's actual voice. And when you said it, I was like, hold up, Sam, you know what? I hear it. And then I had to go watch episode of Totally Spies because now I was just obsessed.
I mean, I'm
But
glad that you
yeah.
know the sound of her voice just by heart. That's a good sign too, because I always like Jennifer Hale's performances.
Yeah.
Because she can do like a cute voice like Alex, or she can do like the really like deep breathy voice where like it's her Samus Aran voice that she never got to really use for Samus Aran because Metroid Prime cut her lines, but it's a good voice.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
That was
and
beautiful.
it's funny that you were mentioning that about a lot of the creative teams where you read a book and you can feel like one person is dominating everything, whether it be the writing or the art. That was actually a conversation that kind of flared up on Twitter a few weeks ago, which it was like, hey, I think that the artist should get top billing and they need to get paid this amount, because they do the work and the writer doesn't. And I feel very blessed that we work the way that we do because that never has come up. Mark and I think one reason why, if people do like our work, then the reason I credit it to what I credit it to is the synchrony that happens between he and myself as far as how we've worked for a decade. He's the brains and I'm essentially the muscle. Now, there's always that very simplistic argument where it's like, well, the writer has it easier because it doesn't take them as long to do it. But I'm like, well, that argument is kind of like saying, let's not name a monument after the guy who commissioned the monument. Let's name it after the hundreds of workers who built it. It's like, well, the reason that we do that is because yes, you can get a labor force to do something, but the reality is that you do have to have kind of the mind to have instituted it in the first place. And that's why that's a conversation that Mark and I don't have too often, because a lot of times it's not the popular one. It's kind of like the whole like who would win in a fight, Goku Saitama argument or Goku and Superman. It's like,
Right.
well, you can have the argument, I'm sure, but the reality in that case is like, well, it's whoever the writer says would win. And in our case, it's like, well, I don't think it's an either or. I think you have to have both working together to create something good.
Well,
Yeah.
I think what helps, and the reason why Tim and I have never had any like big fights over the narratives of Black Ops or Common America, is that when we're working out the plot for each volume or the story arcs, we get all the big picture plot points out of the way in the informal stage when we're workshopping the summary and just doing our notes back and forth and hammering out the rough edges. When it gets down to the scripting phase, I don't send Tim a script where like halfway through the script, Carly like dies or something. And Tim's like, what? Like, what the heck are you doing? Like, you never told me this was going to happen. Like that's never a problem because we already know where the story's going in advance and we agree upon it in the informal sessions. So when Tim gets the script, it's all pretty much what he was expecting. And the notes he sends me back, I usually only ever have to do like one more draft. And it's usually minor things like he asks me like, hey, Mark, you have a transition on the transition is on the even page or on the odd page when you should have it on the even page. Can you stretch this out by a page and then reduce one page somewhere else in the book? Kind of just formatting stuff, the logistics of it. So it reads better. And if Tim asks me to do a rewrite, it's usually while he's drawing and he gets to a page where like maybe the action as it was laid out in my script isn't quite matching the flow of what he's drawing. So he asks me to do some rescripting on the fly, in which case like, okay, I'll get those right back to you. And I do that. So I don't know, we kind of got it down to a science now. So it's never really a problem.
Well, that is what I can definitely say I experience with my artists and what I wish for creators in general, that you have that synergy, that give and take where you're both two different organs or two parts of the same body. One may be the outside of the car, one may be the engine, one may be this, one may be that. And sure, people will look at the book and be like, oh, the art, the art, the art. But the truth is, you need
It's
both.
like, who'd win in a fight, your liver or your kidney? Like, I don't know, but if my liver and my kidney got in a fight, I'd lose.
Exactly, right?
And I think that probably using the body as an anatomical model, I think the more appropriate analogy would be the brain and the heart. It's like, which one is more important, the brain or the heart? And the heart's like, dude, I'm pumping 24 hours a day. Like the brain gets to take a little nap for, for 8 hours. It's like, I don't think that's quite a fair comparison because the two of them need to be working properly or else you're going to have some major problems.
Exactly. And that's the whole takeaway of it, is that I always say I write the pretty words and give them to my artists to then draw the pretty pictures. Without them, I'd have no pictures. Without me, they'd have no words.
Well, I think also what helps indie comics, not just ours, but a lot of other indie comics, what makes them feel more sincere and authentic, like you said, the characters feel more like real people and less like, corporate mascots. The difference is that if you're writing for a corporate comic, you have your writer and then you have your artist. And never the twain shall meet, because in between them they have editors, and the editors are the middlemen who pass the script back to the artist and then pass the notes back to the writer, and then the artist and the writer almost never actually directly collaborate with one another. They may never even exchange two words to each other because they have a team of editors playing interference between them. And it's not just editors. Like, there's the assistant editor who works directly with the writer and the artist. Then there's the group editor. If you're writing a popular franchise like Batman, there's a whole like cabal of editors who figure out whatever the storyline is going to be for the next 6 years and then throw it all out the window every 5 months when they change their minds. And then they have, the corporate executives, the suits, who will review everything and say, no, you can't have Batman do or say this because we're going to do we still need to be able to sell underoos to kiddies, or like, oh no, Batman's going to be in a movie and this is the suit he's going to have in the new movie, and we want synergy with the movie, so you've got to tell the artist to redraw Batman on every page in this new costume, and then all that comes down, and that's why everything reads so it's almost like trying to put a mosaic together from seashells. It just comes off so weird, like macaroni art. It's so awkward and clumsy. Because there's just so much interference from so many different levels of bureaucracy within the production, and the actual creative talents, the artist and the writer, never actually get to directly collaborate with each other. Whereas in indie books, it's like I said, Tim and I, we workshop everything directly back and forth informally before we even put anything down and get a script going. And that doing so allows us to confer with each other how we want the characters to act, how we want them to talk, what we want their storylines to be. And we essentially edit each other. We don't have, an outside editor telling us what we need to do back and forth and keeping us apart. Tim sends me his arts, and if mostly his art's always good, so the only thing I really have to give back to him on notes are usually just recommendations for lettering. And when Tim gets my script, we've already agreed on most everything, so his notes back to me are usually just technical structural details. So we're able to work together in tandem like that, and it's a benefit that indie comics have that corporate comics just simply don't, by virtue of being corporate IPs.
Yeah, that most definitely. I can definitely get that feel when I read, like I said, those industry books, and you just feel like what are you doing? Like I know at least one of y'all has suffered through Dragon Ball Evolution.
I have, yes.
So you already know, like that, the whole mess that movie was, I completely blame on the studio. And that and the movie being in like development hell since I was in middle school in the early 2000s. But just there was so many areas where you could tell, okay, not only do these people not have any connection to Dragon Ball, the property, they don't have any connection to each other. because none of this scene has nothing to do with this scene, which is completely disjointed from this. And you could just tell it was put together by a committee of people who, some were over here, some over here, some over here. And it was a complete how not to do an adaptation and a movie. And there are so many books out there like that right now. But like you said, in the indie scene, since you have that one-on-one, or however many of y'all is on the team, y'all all can work together. And if y'all have that fusion of your minds, then you can do great stuff like y'all have been doing, and how y'all will keep doing. I'm going to throw that out in the universe. But we're getting close to an hour. I do want to go ahead and wrap this up, but I can't thank you guys enough for coming on, sitting down and chatting it up with your boy. Like, this has been just an absolute treat. Like, before I let y'all go, is there anything you want to say? Any quick tips? Anything you want to plug? Like, and just have at it.
Yeah, sure. I don't know when this is going to air, but if it does air before August, the whole Iconic Comics crew, including Mark, myself, Doug Ernst, Matt Weldon, Bill Williams, Alejandro Mirabal, and one other who I don't think I can announce just yet. We're all going to be at the Bell County Comic Con, which is going to be on August 7th and 8th. It's going to be a Saturday, Sunday. We have an official sponsorship. So Kamen America is actually the mascot of the Bell County Comic Con. There were 27,000 attendees in 2019. And they're projecting that they're going to have over 30,000 this year. So we're very, very honored for that distinction. If you're around Waco or Temple, Texas, and even in Austin, you might actually see the flyers around businesses. So you'll actually see Common America on several flyers that are around those towns. For the fulfillment of Black Ops X Common America, the books are actually arriving on August the 6th and August the 9th to our fulfillment here in Temple, Texas. And so the fulfillment should be taking place pretty soon after that, probably a week after the show is over. And then once the fulfillment starts, we will begin the campaign on Indiegogo. And that one will be very limited. I think it's only going to be 2 weeks because we have to wrap up the year, which will conclude in September. So in September, we're going to launch Common America Volume 4. That will run for, I think, a month. And I am about 9 pages away from finishing up that volume. So I'll be sending that off to Mark for some final edits. And then, like he said, he's going to be starting the script for 5, which I'll be working on this fall, during the fall and the winter. So right now, everything is on track. And we're very thankful to you for having us on. And we hope that if you ever need us on in the future, that you'll let us know.
You can go ahead and strike that if. Okay, it's gonna be a win. Y'all are coming back on the show. Okay.
Sure. Absolutely. More than happy to.
Awesome, man. So y'all heard it from them, man. Check them out. What's the name of that convention one more time?
It's called the Bell County Comic Con. So it is in Temple. Actually, it's technically in Belton, Texas, which is directly between Dallas and Austin. It's about 40 minutes from both, right smack dab in the middle, just about 20 or 30 minutes from Fort Hood. So great show, very family friendly. It's going to be actually technically, I think it's the 4th year they've been doing it. And for a mid-sized show, it is huge. Like I said before, they're hoping to break the record of 30,000 attendees. So it'll be a lot of fun. And we're going to be there right in the middle of the artist alley in a huge island. All the Iconic Comics guys are going to be in one place. So we hope to meet some of our readers there.
Awesome,
and if the Iconic Comics guys don't entice you to go, just listeners out there, Sergeant Slaughter's going to be there. And so is Shang Tsung from the original 90s Mortal Kombat movie, the good Mortal Kombat movie. Plus a whole bunch of other folks are going to be there too. They've actually just started dropping the guest announcements. So there's a lot of folks who are going to be showing up, a lot of special guests.
Wow, y'all got me wishing I was living in Texas. Well, all my Texas people, or people who can be in Texas, y'all know where to be. And y'all also know to check out the Common America X Black Hops book. It's coming out soon. If you backed it already, it'll be your way soon. If not, it's going on what is going on Indiegogo in August. So, but please, I have to say this. They may be too nice to say it. I'm not too nice to say it. When y'all back these books, if you order a physical copy, they're going to send you what's called a survey. You have to fill that out in order for them to have your address for them to send it to you. If you don't fill it out and then that results in you not getting a book, do not come to them on no weird stuff talking about where my book at. You did not check your email. So check your email when you sign up.
Check your spam filter too, because we
Yes.
have had people who put Kickstarter on their spam filter, and so they end up never getting any of those notification emails. So if for some reason you can't get it out of your spam filter, or you suspect that it's being filtered, you can always log into your Kickstarter account on the Kickstarter website, check your profile. There'll be a little button saying surveys, and it'll have a little number next to it saying how many surveys you got to fill out. And you can just go right there and do it right on the Kickstarter website.
Beautiful, beautiful, awesome. So definitely take all that in. So much awesomeness coming from you guys, just completely doing the damn thing in the indie comics realm. Thank you so much, Tim Lim, Mark Pellegrini. It's been awesome. And thank you all for listening to us. And we will be back to talk about all things in the realm of comics and nerdery. And it's just going to be awesome. But until then, I'm Anime. Thank y'all for watching and listening. And I will talk to y'all later. Deuces.